This lesson we're going to start solving multi-step inequalities, and just like to solve a single-step inequality, solving a multi-step inequality is going to be a lot like solving an equation. In fact, there's only those couple of things that we have to keep in mind when we're solving an inequality. First of all, the variable always has to be on the left side when we're done, and second of all is if we happen to multiply or divide by a negative, then the inequality sign has to change directions. But other than that, we're going to solve them exactly like we do when we solve equations. So number one is an example of a problem that could be done as a two-step inequality, but we're going to do it as a one-step inequality. Remember, when you see a negative sign above the fraction bar, that instead of thinking above the fraction bar, you can also think of it as being below the fraction bar. You can mark it out up here above and just write it as down below. So if we have x divided by negative 2 is greater than 7, what would you do to both sides of that inequality to get x by itself? Okay, you'd want to multiply both sides by negative 2. And so we're going to draw our line and multiply each side over here by negative 2. And so when we do that, bring our x down. Okay, 7 times negative 2, that's negative 14. And since we multiplied by a negative, instead of bringing this inequality sign straight down, when we bring it down, we're going to flip it around. And so our answer is going to be x is less than negative 14. Now, we're not going to graph every single one of these, but if we were to graph this one, remember, you would have an open circle at negative 14. And then our inequality sign, or our arrow, is going to go the direction that inequality sign is pointing. And so since it's pointing this way, our line's going to go this way. And so our inequality, when we graph it, is going to look like this. Open circle at negative 14 and going to the left. All right, now number 2 is not a problem that we can do as a one-step inequality. We're going to solve this just like we would an equation. So remember, when we solve an equation, first thing we always do is we get rid of parentheses. Well, there's no parentheses in this. And so then the next thing we do is we sort the equation out. We get our variables over on this side, on the left side, and we get all the things that are numbers over here on the right side. And so when we look at this equation, there are some things that we need to move. Okay, we need to move this 6 because it's not a variable. So it's on the wrong side, so it's a 6 here. So we'll write it down as a minus 6 over here. Okay, so now that's gone. Okay, over on the number side, we need to get rid of the negative 3w. So since it's negative 3w, we'll write it down over here as a positive 3w, or just a 3w. So now it's gone over there. Okay, so now let's combine together what we've got. So over on the variable side, we have 3w. Okay, over here on the number side, we have a negative 3 and a negative 6. Minus 3 and minus 6. So that's going to give us minus 9. Now, we haven't done any multiplying or dividing yet. Okay, all we've done is just sorted this equation out. And so that inequality sign is not going to change. We're just going to bring it straight down. So it's going to stay facing the direction it was facing. So now we have 3w is less than or equal to negative 9. Okay, so then what would our next and final step be to solve this inequality? All right, we would divide both sides by 3. And since we're dividing by a positive 3, we're not going to change that sign. So the w is going to stay here. Negative 9 divided by 3 is negative 3, and that inequality sign is just going to come straight down. And so our answer is going to be w is less than or equal to negative 3. So now if we were going to graph this one, since it's got a solid line underneath it, we would have a solid circle at negative 3. And again, this inequality is pointing to the left, and so our arrow would point to the left, just like that. And so if we were to graph this, that's what that one would look like. Okay, let's look at the next one here. We have 9 plus u is greater than or equal to negative 2u. So again, there's no parentheses here, so the first thing we want to do is sort this equation out. So let's start by getting our u's over on this side and our numbers over on this side. So everything that's a u is over here, everything that's a numbers over here. So we would want to maybe move this 9. So we'll put it down as a minus 9 over here. We also want to move this minus 2u. And so we'll put it down as a plus 2u over on the u side. Okay, so now let's combine things together. Got 1u plus 2u, so 3u on the u side. And over on the number side, we just have minus 9. And again, all we did was sort this equation out. So drop down your inequality sign just like you see it. Okay, now what would your next step be? All right, you're going to divide both sides by 3. And so your answer, you would have u is greater than or equal to negative 3. Again, you divided by a positive 3, so you don't change that sign. It stays the same. Okay, now number 4 is an example of another example of a two-step equation. We don't have to sort this one out. It's already sorted out. All the a's are over on the left, numbers are over on the right. We just have to get all this stuff away from the a. And so we could think of this as something different, but we're going to think of it as 4a divided by 5. And so the first thing we're going to do is get rid of the divide by 5. So what would you do to get rid of divide by 5? All right, you'd multiply by 5. So over here we're going to have 4a, and when we take 12 times 5, we get 60. Okay, we multiplied by a positive 5, so again, that inequality sign doesn't change. Okay, then what would your next step be? All right, you should, since it's 4a, you should divide by 4. And so when you take 60 divided by 4, you get the answer of 15. So we have a is greater than 15 is our answer. All right, number 5 is the first one that we've seen that's had parentheses in it. And so, again, when you have parentheses, the first thing you want to do is use the distributive property to get rid of those parentheses. So go ahead and distribute here 4 and then in parentheses f plus 1. Okay, what do you get when you do that? All right, so you should have 4f plus 4, and then we're just going to copy the rest of this problem down. Is less than 2f plus 4. Okay, so now we're ready to sort this equation out. So get all your f's over on the left side and all your numbers over on the right side. So get things sorted out here. Okay, so you should take this 2f and move it over here with the 4f, and you should take this plus 4 and make it a minus 4 and put it over with the other plus 4. So remember, when you change it from one side to the other, you change the signs. So we took the plus 4 and made it a minus 4, we took the 2f and made it a minus 2f. Okay, now combine things together. So 4f minus 2f is going to be 2f, and plus 4 minus 4, that would be 0. Now again, we haven't divided by a negative or multiplied by a negative, so that inequality sign just drops straight down. So it stays facing the same way it was. Okay, now we want to divide. So divide both sides by 2. And so what is your final answer? Okay, so when you take 0 divided by 2, you get 0. So f is less than 0 should be your final answer for that one. All right, go ahead and try number 6 here. Simplify it and see what your final answer is, and then we'll check and see if you've got the right answer. All right, so the first thing you should have done is gotten rid of parentheses. So 8 times z minus 1 is going to make it 8z minus 8. Okay, then we still have the minus 1. That's less than or equal to 10z minus 1. All right, so now we want to sort this equation out. We want to get the variables on one side, variables on the left, and the numbers on the right. So everything that's a z belongs over here. Everything that's a number belongs over here. Okay, so let's look at what we need to move here. We've got a minus 8 that we're going to have to move. So there's a minus 8, so we'll write down a plus 8. Okay, we've got a minus 1 that needs to move. So we'll write down a plus 1. And we've got a 10z that needs to move. And so we'll write down minus 10z. Okay, so we've gotten rid of those things that weren't in the right spots. Okay, so now let's combine things together. So what would 8z minus 10z give you? Okay, so we have negative 2z on the left. Okay, on the right, when you've got negative 1 plus 8 plus 1, that gives you 8. And so, again, we haven't changed the inequality sign yet because all we've done is just move things around. So negative 2z is less than or equal to 8. You're going to divide by negative 2. And so this is where you're going to want to change that inequality sign because you divided by a negative. And so your final answer is going to be z, change the inequality sign, greater than or equal to negative 4. So z is greater than or equal to negative 4 would be your answer on number 6. Okay, on our last one on number 7, a lot of times what we would do before is we would write this as two proportions and we'd cross multiply. We could still do that, but that's a little tricky with inequalities because you can have some problems with the inequality sign when you do that. So instead of writing it as a proportion and cross multiplying, we're just going to multiply this 4 across to the other side. So in other words, we're going to kind of do half of that. We're going to just take 4 and multiply it over here. Now make sure when you do that, it becomes part of a set of parentheses. So it's going to be 4 times 2n plus 1. Okay, go ahead and finish solving this problem, and then come back and we'll check your answer. Okay, so the first thing you should have done is you should have used the distributive property. So 4 times 2n plus 1 makes that 8m plus 4. Okay, so at this point, everything else is still the same. 9m plus 1 on the left, 8m plus 4 on the right. Okay, now we want to get our m's on one side. We want to get our numbers on the other side. Okay, so as we do that, we're going to need to move this plus 1. because it's over on the wrong side. So make it a -1 over on the number side. The 8m is also going to have to move because it's a variable. It belongs over here with the 9m. So we're going to make it a -8m. Okay, so those things have been moved now. So now let's combine together. 9m minus 8m is m. 4 minus 1 is 3. And we don't change the inequality sign because we haven't divided or multiplied by anything negative yet. And now in this problem, we don't have anything else to do because there's nothing to divide by in front of this m. Now you might have had a 1 there and divided by 1. And that doesn't change your answer at all. So m is greater than or equal to 3 is your final answer there. So when solving these inequalities, it's a lot like solving an equation. The only thing that is slightly different is you have to have the variable over on the left side. There's no variation in that. It's got to be over on the left. The other thing you got to watch out for is when you multiply or divide by a negative, you've got to change the inequality sign. And that's only going to happen on that very last step. That's the only time that you're going to be multiplying or dividing by, possibly by a negative. And so sometimes you will, sometimes you won't. We did on number 6, we didn't on number 5. It depends on what that number is that's next to the variable. If it's negative when you divide, then you have to switch the sign. If not, you don't switch the sign. Okay, so you should be able to solve all of these multi-step inequalities at this point.